But anytime he had a problem, Scappy would handle it. Like, so he had a problem with another contracting company. It was called Amcon Contracting. And they got into a beef. The guy didn't want to pay my father. They owed my father like 120 or 110 or $120,000. And they got into an argument. And the guy says, well, you're going to have to deal with some friends of mine. And my father goes, well, you're going to have to deal with some friends of mine. And they go sit down. And turns out this guy who owned Amcon, his friend was Tough Tony Salerno. And they have had a sit down. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because this is a long. My father's been dead for 20 years, but from what I understand, Scappy couldn't sit with Tough Tony. He had to either bring Carmine to open or his son, if that makes sense, right? Because Scappy wasn't the boss of the family.
No, I'm sure he was a skipper at the time, but
he was.
I don't know. It's a little before me to really, but yeah, he would have had to bring somebody. That's protocol.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure that Scappy was definitely a skipper at the time, and I'm pretty sure they had I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure Carmine's son opened for them, and then they left. Carmine's son was
Alley Boy.
Alley Boy, right? Sorry,
that makes sense. Yeah,
right, Alley Boy, and then they got together and they sat there, right, and. Tony had a really bad reputation. So they sit down, and as soon as they start, Tony looks at my father and goes, why don't you do the fucking job right? Right. So Scappy said to my father, when you talk to Tony, call him Mr. Tony. Right. And he said, Mr. Tony, I am doing the job right. And they're kind of going on. They had to have a sit down for like 2 or 3 times. And then finally, I think Tony and Amcon brought in their own electrician to like see what if my father was really doing the job right. So after some time, the guy says, John is doing the job right. He's, so Scappy calls my father the next day and says, is a check for 90,000 good? Because he owed him 110 or 120. So my father says, yeah. And the next day he had a check for $90,000. So that was like, some of the things that had happened. There were other funny stories during this time where my father would have to go to Scappy's house. And he would have he had, I think he lived in Bensonhurst at the time, I think. Am I right?
I think in the Bath Avenue area. Bath Avenue.
So he would leave the door open and he'd be counting money, and he had this money all over the table. And my father would say, Scappy, you want me to shut the door? He goes, no, there's all nice people around here. And then he would say, besides, Bruno is in the back room, and he apparently had a machine gun or an Uzi that he called Bruno. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
No,
no, really. So he said, yeah, besides Bruno's. And there was a couple of times my father sent my brother, and he would same thing. He had the door open and there'd be like porn playing. And then he would, whatever, had money on the table, whatever he would have to talk about with,
I got a funny story for you.
Go ahead. Go in.
You want to finish that first? Finish your thought?
No, that's it. Go ahead. We'll go more
into it. You said porn, right? You said porn.
Mm-hmm.
He was the king of that.
Really?
We go to his club on Carroll Street, the president down there, and it would always be on the TVs. But the funny story was, and I wasn't there, but a friend of mine, Ronaldo, told me just recently that him and Alley Boy had to go see Scappy. So they get to the house, and they get to the door, and they can hear all these loud moans and groans. So finally he says, come on in. They walk in, and he's sitting there, and he sits crossing his legs like Al Pacino used to sit.
I know what you mean. Okay,
yeah. And well, The Godfather, Al Pacino, way sat in that movie.
Yeah.
And he says it's I mean, a vicious porn. I mean, it's triple X you can get. So I'm not going to get into detail. Picture
right.
Right. And they're sitting there. They both feel uneasy, Alley Boy and Ren. And finally, they said to him, "They says, well, you got it so loud, how people can hear." He says, "Why watch this stuff?" Whatever they said to him, and he says to them, he says, "What am I supposed to watch? Love Story."